I'm Dr. David Thompson, and before we get into today's topic, I want to say something clearly, because this subject touches on your heart and your kidneys, and I take that seriously. What you're about to hear is educational information based on general medical understanding. It is not a diagnosis, and it's not a substitute for sitting down with your own physician who knows your history and your medications. Please keep that in mind as we go, especially if you live with any heart or kidney condition. With that said, let's begin. I want to ask you something, and I want you to really sit with it for a moment. If you are waking up 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a night to use the bathroom, what if that had very little to do with your bladder? What if it had very little to do with your prostate, and very little to do with how much water you drank with dinner? What if the real explanation for those exhausting nights was sitting quietly in your lower legs the entire day, waiting patiently for the moment you finally lie down? I know how strange that sounds. Most of us have been taught to think of nighttime bathroom trips as a bladder problem or a prostate problem, and sometimes it truly is. But there is another mechanism, a vascular one, that I see missed again and again in my practice, and I want to walk you through it carefully today. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Arthur because his story captures this so well. Arthur was 71 years old, retired, and by the time he came to see me, he had already tried nearly everything he could think of. He had stopped drinking any water after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, convinced that less fluid in the evening meant fewer trips to the bathroom. He was taking 3 different over-the-counter bladder and prostate supplements he had ordered online, hoping one of them would finally make the difference. And still, night after night, he was waking up roughly every 90 minutes, exhausted, foggy, and honestly, more than a little frightened. Arthur told me the lost sleep wasn't even the worst part. What weighed on him most was the walk to the bathroom in the dark, half asleep, disoriented, genuinely afraid of losing his footing and falling. He'd started keeping a nightlight on in the hallway, and he'd started dreading bedtime itself because he knew what the night held for him. That fear, more than the fatigue, is what finally brought him in. He'd also started avoiding evening plans with his grandchildren, worried that a night away from his own bathroom and his own dark, familiar hallway would be too risky. Little by little, this problem had quietly begun shrinking his world, and that's often how these things go. It's rarely just about sleep. It's about everything sleep touches. When we sat down together and went through his history and his test results, Arthur's bladder function looked essentially normal for a man his age. His prostate was unremarkable on exam. There was no infection, no obstruction, nothing that would typically explain waking up 4 times a night. So naturally, I had to ask myself, where is this actually coming from? And the answer, as it so often does in the human body, had to do with plumbing of an entirely different kind. It had to do with where fluid sits in the body throughout the day, and what happens to that fluid the instant you lie down flat to sleep. Let's talk about that mechanism in detail, because once you understand it, the whole pattern starts to make sense. During the day, while you are sitting or standing, gravity is constantly pulling fluid downward, toward your feet, your ankles, and your lower calves. In a younger body, the veins in your legs have a remarkable system of tiny one-way valves. Each time your calf muscles contract, those valves snap open and shut in sequence, pushing blood and fluid back up toward the heart, against gravity, step by step. It's an elegant system, and most people never think about it once in their entire lives. But as we age, those valves can weaken. They may not close as tightly as they once did, and some fluid that should be pumped back upward instead lingers in the tissue of the lower legs. Over the course of a day of sitting, in a car, at a desk, in front of the television, that fluid can accumulate quietly in the ankles and calves. Many people don't even notice it happening, beyond perhaps some mild swelling by the end of the day. Then evening comes, and you lie down to sleep. Gravity stops working against that fluid the way it did all day. Instead, a portion of what had pooled in your lower legs begins moving back into your central bloodstream, back toward your heart. In some older adults, this can represent a genuinely significant volume, in some cases close to a liter or more of fluid re-entering circulation over the course of an hour or 2 after lying down. Your heart notices this shift almost immediately. When extra fluid volume arrives in the upper chambers of the heart, those chamber walls stretch slightly under the added pressure. In response to that stretch, specialized cells release a hormone called atrial natriuretic peptide, which most people simply call ANP. I like to think of ANP as a signal flare shot up into the body's control tower. Its message is urgent and direct. We have too much fluid in circulation right now. Kidneys, please start filtering it out immediately. And your kidneys, which are remarkably good at their job, respond exactly as instructed. They begin producing urine, sometimes at a pace considerably faster than what happens during the day, which means your bladder can fill far sooner than it normally would overnight, sometimes every hour or so, instead of every 3 or 4 hours. This overall pattern has a specific clinical name. It's called nocturnal polyuria, which simply means producing an unusually large share of your total daily urine output during the hours you're supposed to be sleeping. In many older adults, this vascular fluid shift mechanism plays a meaningful contributing role, sitting alongside other possible factors that your own physician is best positioned to evaluate, things like sleep apnea, certain medications, or blood sugar patterns. I want to be honest with you that this isn't the whole story for every single person, but for a great many people who have already ruled out bladder and prostate problems, this vascular mechanism is very often the missing piece. I think it helps to picture this the way I explained it to Arthur himself, using a garden hose as an example. Imagine a garden hose lying in the sun all day, slowly building a bit of extra pressure from sitting in one position. Nothing dramatic happens while it's just sitting there. But the moment you pick it up and change its angle, all that built-up pressure suddenly has somewhere new to go, and it moves quickly. Your legs, in a sense, are behaving like that hose throughout the day, and lying down in bed is the moment everything changes angle all at once. This is also why so many people in this exact situation feel confused, even a little betrayed by their own bodies, when their doctor has already ruled out an infection, ruled out an enlarged prostate, and ruled out an overactive bladder, and yet the nighttime trips continue anyway. It's because the true driver was never really about the bladder holding urine poorly. It was about how much urine the kidneys were being instructed to produce in the first place, hour by hour, once that trapped daytime fluid came rushing back into circulation. If what I've described so far is resonating with you, if you're recognizing your own nights in Arthur's story, I would genuinely love to hear from you. Go ahead and type the word vitality in the comments below if this is striking a chord, or type the word independence if you're watching today because you want your energy, your sleep, and your sense of control over your own nights back for good. I read these comments, and they tell me exactly what to keep making for you. Now let's talk about how you can actually check whether this pattern applies to you, starting today, using signs you can observe yourself at home. The first sign I want you to look for is something I call the sock ring mark. Sometime around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, after you've been up and about for most of the day, take off your socks and look closely at your ankles. If you see a deep, persistent indentation where the elastic band was sitting, a groove that takes several minutes, sometimes longer, to fully fade away, that's a meaningful clue that fluid has been quietly accumulating in the tissue of your lower legs throughout the day. A faint, quickly fading line is normal for almost anyone. A deep groove that lingers is worth paying attention to. The second sign has to do with the color of your urine, and specifically how it compares between daytime and nighttime. If you notice that your urine overnight tends to run quite pale, almost crystal clear, while your urine during the day is noticeably more concentrated and yellow, that difference is consistent with your kidneys processing a rapid fluid load overnight, essentially flushing out that returning leg fluid, rather than simply filtering waste products at a normal, steady pace the way they do during the day. Some patients also tell me they can predict, almost to the day, when this pattern will be worse, and that's usually after a day spent mostly sitting, whether on a long car ride, at a family gathering, or simply in a chair watching television for hours without getting up to walk around. On those days, the fluid has more time and less muscle movement to help drain it, which means more of it pools by evening, and often a rougher night follows. Keeping a simple mental note of which days tend to be worse can actually help confirm this pattern for you. The third sign is something patients often describe to me as heavy leg fatigue in the mid to late afternoon. It's a dull ache, or a sense of heaviness and tiredness in the calves that seems to build steadily starting somewhere around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you find yourself wanting to put your feet up by late afternoon, not because you're generally tired, but because your legs specifically feel weighed down, that can point directly to fluid accumulating in the lower leg tissue over the course of the day. The fourth sign involves what happens in your legs after you've been lying down for a while at night. Some people notice restless leg sensations, an uncomfortable urge to move the legs, or calf cramps that tend to appear specifically after they've settled into bed, rather than earlier in the evening. One contributing idea here is that shifting fluid and changing tissue pressure in the lower leg can irritate nerve endings running through that area as the fluid redistributes. I want to be careful and honest with you that restless legs and cramps can have several different causes, so if this is frequent or severe for you, it's absolutely worth raising directly with your doctor rather than assuming it's only related to fluid shifts. The fifth and final sign is morning dehydration. If you wake up with a notably dry mouth and real, genuine thirst, despite having gotten up to urinate multiple times throughout the night, that combination is telling. It suggests your body pushed out a substantial volume of fluid while you slept, leaving you net dehydrated by morning, even though, paradoxically, you were up and down all night long dealing with your bladder. I want to be clear that none of these 5 signs, on their own, amounts to a diagnosis. But if several of them sound familiar to you, if you're nodding along to 2, 3, or 4 of these, it is absolutely worth bringing this pattern up directly with your physician. I'd encourage you to use these exact words when you do: nocturnal polyuria and leg fluid pooling, so that you can be properly evaluated for this specific mechanism, rather than simply being handed another bladder medication that may not be addressing the actual root cause. Now let's talk about what you can actually do about this, starting as soon as this evening, always in partnership with your own doctor, about what's appropriate for your particular health situation. The first step in what I think of as an evening gravity reversal routine is above the heart elevation, sometime around 5 o'clock in the late afternoon, ideally before you sit down for dinner. Try lying down or reclining in a way that positions your ankles slightly above the level of your heart. I want to emphasize something important here. A standard recliner often isn't quite enough to achieve this, because most recliners keep your legs roughly level with your torso, or only slightly lower than your heart, rather than genuinely elevated above it. You may need to prop your legs up on 2 or 3 firm pillows, or use a foam wedge, so that gravity can do real, meaningful work, pulling that pooled fluid out of your lower legs during the day, gently, gradually, and safely, rather than letting your body handle that fluid shift all at once overnight, all through your kidneys and your bladder. The second step is what I call the ankle pump, and you can do this while your legs are elevated. Simply flex your feet upward, pulling your toes toward your knees, hold for a moment, and then point your toes away from you, repeating this slow pumping motion for several minutes at a time. Your calf muscles function almost like a second heart for the veins in your legs, squeezing blood and fluid back upward with every contraction. Doing this gentle pumping motion while your legs are elevated gives that natural mechanical pump a genuine opportunity to move trapped fluid out of the tissue and back into circulation earlier in the day, when your body can handle it gradually. The third step is light compression, worn during the hours you tend to sit the most, typically the early to mid-afternoon. Properly fitted, doctor-approved compression socks or sleeves can help prevent that fluid from pooling in the first place, essentially supporting those weakened vein valves from the outside. I want to encourage you to have your doctor or a pharmacist help you select the appropriate compression level for your situation, since too much compression can be uncomfortable, or in some circulation conditions, genuinely unsafe. This isn't a one-size-fits-all product, and getting the right fit matters. And the fourth step is what I call the hydration reset. I understand the instinct, the same instinct Arthur had, to simply stop drinking water in the evening altogether, believing that less fluid in means fewer trips to the bathroom. But cutting off fluids entirely can actually concentrate your urine and irritate the lining of the bladder, which sometimes makes urgency and spasms worse rather than better. Instead, I'd encourage you to focus on drinking the majority of your fluids earlier in the day, tapering gradually in the evening, rather than stopping abruptly. And it's worth having a conversation with your doctor about whether your electrolyte balance, particularly sodium, needs any adjustment, since that balance can also meaningfully influence how your body handles fluid shifts overnight. Now I want to pause here because this next part matters a great deal. If you live with congestive heart failure, kidney disease, or you are currently on blood pressure medications or diuretics, please do not begin steep leg elevation or compression on your own, without guidance. Moving a significant volume of fluid back into circulation more quickly than your body is accustomed to can place real strain on a heart or kidneys that are already working under compromised conditions. Please talk to your physician first and let them guide exactly how much elevation, if any, is appropriate and safe for your specific situation. The same caution applies to kidney disease, since kidneys that are already struggling to keep up may not handle a faster return of fluid into circulation the way a healthy kidney would. And if you're on blood pressure medication, sudden shifts in circulating fluid volume can occasionally affect how your blood pressure responds, which is another reason this is worth discussing with your doctor before making any changes to your routine. And I want to say this as plainly as I can. Never, under any circumstances, adjust the dose or the timing of a prescribed diuretic medication on your own without your doctor's direct involvement. These medications are carefully calibrated to your individual body and your individual condition, and changing them without medical supervision can be genuinely dangerous. If you notice sudden swelling, shortness of breath, chest discomfort, or a rapid, unexplained weight gain of several pounds in a day or two, please contact your doctor promptly or seek emergency care, since those can be signs that fluid is building up in ways that need urgent medical attention rather than home management. Let me tell you how things ultimately turned out for Arthur, because I think it will give you real hope. Once he began elevating his legs for about 20 minutes each afternoon, right around 5 o'clock, doing his gentle ankle pumps while elevated, wearing light compression during his most sedentary hours, and adjusting when he drank his water throughout the day, rather than eliminating it in the evening, something genuinely shifted for him. Within about 2 weeks, he told me, with real emotion in his voice, that he had slept 6 continuous hours for the first time in longer than he could remember. He wasn't stumbling to the bathroom in the dark anymore. He'd stopped needing that hallway nightlight. He had his mornings back, and honestly, he told me, he felt like he had a piece of himself back too. That uninterrupted sleep matters more than most people realize, and I want you to understand why. Deep, continuous sleep plays a real and measurable role in protecting memory, mood, and physical balance as we age. And reducing those middle-of-the-night trips to the bathroom can meaningfully lower your risk of a fall in the dark, which remains one of the most serious threats to independence for adults in their 70s and beyond. This isn't just about comfort. This is about protecting your ability to live life fully, on your own terms, for years to come. Arthur put it to me simply, near the end of one of his follow-up visits. He said he hadn't just gotten his sleep back, he'd gotten his evenings back too, because he no longer dreaded them. He started saying yes to those evening plans with his grandchildren again, without that quiet worry sitting in the back of his mind. That's the kind of change I hope this information can bring to your own life as well. If this video has helped you understand what might really be happening inside your own body, I would genuinely love for you to check out the next video on your screen, where we walk through safe, gentle exercises specifically designed to strengthen aging leg veins, so you can keep this fluid moving the way your body was designed to, naturally, over the long run. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Type the word vitality in the comments if today's video helped you, or type independence if you're ready to take your nights and your mornings back for good. I read every single one of your comments, and they truly do shape what we cover next. I'm Dr. David Thompson. I'll see you in the next video.